She cheated, asked for an open marriage, so I played along and took everything. My wife begged me to open our marriage, right after I caught her cheating. But what she didn't know, I'd been secretly documenting everything, every lie, every betrayal, and what happened next left her speechless. I kept up the act for months, quietly gathering proof that she was neglecting our kids while I worked on filing for both divorce and full custody. Hi everyone. I'm using a throwaway account for reasons that'll make sense soon enough. My name isn't really Jake, but that's what I'll use here. I'm 37. My wife, let's call her Emily, is 34. We've been together for 12 years, married for 10. We have 2 kids. Nora, our daughter, is 9, and Ben, our son, just turned 7. I think I'm writing this to get some control over the chaos that's blown up in my life over the past couple of days. Maybe putting it into words for strangers to read will help me see things more clearly, or at least give me a place to vent. I've worked as a senior project manager in commercial construction for the last 12 years. The jobs are huge, expensive, and always on tight timelines. That means long hours on most days. I'm at the site or in the office for 10 to 12 hours, and when deadlines get tight or problems hit, which they always do, those days stretch to 14 or even 15 hours. Working weekends, at least Saturday mornings, is pretty standard too. It's a high-pressure job, no doubt, but it's given us a good life. We bought a nice house in a solid neighborhood with strong schools, and Emily never had to worry about money or going back to work. Before the kids came along, she did freelance graphic design. She was creative and had a small circle of loyal clients. When Nora was born, we had a lot of conversations about careers and raising kids. Emily was very clear. She wanted to be a full-time mom, at least while the kids were still young. I backed her on that. I was earning enough, and we both agreed that it was better for the kids to have one parent home all the time. About 6 months after Nora's birth, she officially stopped taking on clients. Since then, she's mostly identified as a homemaker, though she'd sometimes help out a friend or do a small project for a community group just for fun, not for the money. For a while, our home life felt balanced. I handled the workload, and she took care of the household and the kids' routines. When I was home, I tried to stay involved, bedtime stories, helping with homework, bath time, weekend outings when work didn't get in the way. Things started changing slowly, about 9 months ago. Emily began saying she felt isolated, like she needed to reconnect with people. Her old college friend Rachel started organizing girls' nights out. At first, it was just once a month, dinner, or a movie. I was on board. I thought it was healthy. I'd take over the kids for the evening, no problem. But pretty quickly, it turned into every other Friday. And over the last 3 months, it became almost every Friday night, and sometimes Saturdays too. I also noticed Rachel wasn't being mentioned much anymore. Instead, I started hearing names I didn't recognize. She changed at home, too, but in small, easy-to-miss ways. She was glued to her phone constantly, always grinning or typing something quickly. If I asked, she'd brush it off, say it was just the group chat or plans for the next outing. She also began putting a lot more effort into how she looked before going out, new outfits, more time doing her hair and makeup. Again, I chalked it up to her just enjoying her time out. Then something happened that threw me off. About 2 months ago, she suddenly added a complicated passcode to her phone. We'd never had secrets like that. We both knew each other's phone pins, not because we were spying, just because it made life easier. I asked about it, and she casually said her phone had updated and now needed a stronger password. It didn't feel right, but I didn't push it. Then about 3 weeks ago, I was sorting through our joint bank account, putting together some receipts for a work expense report. That's when I saw a series of charges from a place called Velvet and Rye, not the real name, obviously. It's a cocktail lounge I'd never heard of, definitely not the type of spot Rachel would hang out in. For transactions over about 6 weeks, all on Friday or Saturday nights. I also saw Uber charges to and from an address in a trendy part of the city, not close to us, and not somewhere Emily had any real reason to go, especially late at night. The amounts weren't massive, but the pattern stood out. It didn't line up with her usual spending habits. I filed it away mentally, a knot tightening in my stomach. But I was buried in a critical deadline at work, barely sleeping, so I pushed it down and told myself I'd deal with it later. That later finally came 2 nights ago. It was a Friday night. Emily had gone out again for one of her usual girls' nights. She didn't get back until about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep, though I hadn't actually closed my eyes. Sure, work had my nerves fried, but the real reason I couldn't sleep was this creeping anxiety that had been growing inside me for weeks. When she came in, she was clearly buzzed, humming to herself while she got ready for bed. She tossed her phone onto her nightstand, screen facing up. A couple minutes later, it buzzed with a notification. I glanced at it out of instinct. The screen lit up and a preview popped into view. It was a message from someone saved as Daniel R. And it said, "Tonight was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." I didn't yell. I didn't even sit up right away. I just laid there, staring at the words like they'd been etched into my brain. After a moment, I asked her in the calmest voice I could manage, "Emily, who's Daniel R.?" She flinched like I'd hit her. When she turned to face me, the blood had drained from her face. Her first instinct was to lie. "Daniel," she said, fumbling. "Oh, he's just a friend of Maya's from the group. He comes out with us sometimes." Still calm, I said. I read the message. "Tonight was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." That doesn't sound like something you'd get from someone's friend in a group setting. That was the moment her mask cracked. She sat down on the edge of the bed with her back to me and started crying. Then it all spilled out, half sentences, sobs, apologies tangled in excuses. She admitted she'd been seeing this guy, Daniel, for about 4 months. They met at Velvet and Rye during one of those supposed girls' nights, though that particular night none of her friends had actually shown up. A few of the following nights out were actually spent entirely with him. She told me she'd been feeling lonely because of how much at work. She said she felt invisible, like no one appreciated her anymore. Daniel had given her attention, made her feel alive again. She kept saying it was a huge mistake, that she still loved me, that she never meant to blow up our marriage or family. I mostly stayed quiet. Our kids were asleep in their rooms, peacefully unaware that everything around them was starting to crack apart. I didn't reach for her. I didn't lash out. I just asked a few questions, basic stuff about the timeline, trying to understand how long this had really been going on. By the next morning, after a sleepless night where we stayed in separate rooms, I moved into the guest bedroom. She looked wrecked, eyes red, face drawn. She apologized over and over again, promising she'd do anything to fix this. And then, out of nowhere, she offered her version of a solution. Her voice was shaky, but there was this strange glimmer of hope in it as she asked me to consider opening up the marriage. She said her feelings for Daniel were real, that he meant something to her, but she also claimed she still loved me and didn't want to break up our home. Her pitch was that we could avoid a messy divorce by redefining our relationship. An open marriage, she said, would let her keep seeing Daniel honestly, and I'd be free to see other people if I wanted to. She called it mature, said it was a forward-thinking way to handle complicated emotions. I just sat there in shock. It felt like she wasn't just admitting to the deception, she wanted to formalize it. Like she was asking me to let this man become part of our lives, our home. I told her I needed time, that I wasn't ready to give her an answer. And now here I am, sitting alone in the small home office with the door shut. Nora and Ben are downstairs watching Saturday morning cartoons. Emily's in the kitchen, doing her best to act like everything's fine, but I can feel the tension behind every movement, every sound. She's putting on a show for the kids, but it's paper thin. Meanwhile, my mind is in overdrive. What does this even mean? How do I deal with this? My gut reaction to her open marriage idea is straight up disgust, but I'm trying to think this through logically too. If I shoot it down right away, does she walk? What happens to the kids? Their stability is all I care about right now, but I work grueling hours. How am I supposed to raise 2 kids alone? It's too much. I feel paralyzed just thinking about it. Has anyone else ever been hit with something like this? A confession of an affair, followed by a proposal to incorporate the person she cheated with into the marriage? What do I even do first? It's been 3 weeks since I first posted about what happened. The flood of comments, advice, and private messages I received completely caught me off guard. I didn't expect that kind of response, and I'm genuinely thankful for it. Reading through everything, from the brutally honest to the deeply empathetic, helped clear some of the mental fog I'd been walking through. It hit me that while what I'm going through feels painfully personal, the deeper issues, deception, heartbreak, impossible choices, aren't rare at all. Turns out, a lot of people have faced situations that echo mine in one way or another. One question that kept coming up was whether there had been earlier signs that Emily was unhappy, or whether we had tried counseling before things spiraled. Looking back, I guess there were hints. Her increasing need for those nights out and a few passing comments about feeling stuck probably meant more than I realized at the time. But she never came to me with anything deeper, nothing that made me think she felt lost or disconnected. Every time I checked in with her, asking if everything was okay, she'd just say she was tired or worn out from parenting. There was never a moment where she sat me down and said, "Something's not right." We hadn't talked about therapy either. I honestly believed, maybe foolishly, that our marriage had a strong foundation. We had stress, sure, but I thought we were solid underneath it all. As for the apology she gave me that night, well, at first, it seemed heartfelt. She cried. She blamed herself. But then she pivoted so quickly into pitching the idea of an open marriage that the whole thing started to feel like damage control. It didn't seem like she was torn up about deceiving me, more like she was scrambling to keep the life she had while still holding on to the new one she'd started with Daniel. She kept saying her feelings for him had surprised her, that she was conflicted and confused. She told me an open marriage was the only way she could see to avoid destroying everything, our family, our home, the life we built. Of all the advice I got, one piece stood out the most: talk to a lawyer. I took that to heart and booked an appointment within 2 days. I found a solid family law attorney through a state referral list, and I can honestly say that 1 hour gave me more clarity than anything else had in a long time. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She walked me through how divorce, custody, and financial separation works where we live. One of her biggest recommendations was to start keeping detailed records. Everything from Emily's behavior and my own time with the kids, to how we were both spending money, to anything she said about her affair or the whole open relationship idea. The lawyer made it clear that this documentation could end up being critical, not just for protecting myself, but especially for ensuring what's best for Nora and Ben if things went that way. She also explained that if an open marriage became a legal issue, evidence of prior cheating and current conduct would absolutely factor into any outcome. After that conversation, and after going over all your comments again and again, I finally made a decision. There was just no way I could accept the idea of an open relationship, especially one built on the wreckage of an affair. It felt like Emily wanted to eat her cake and still keep it on the plate, too. But at the same time, I didn't want to blow everything up right then and there. I was worried that pushing back too hard, too fast might make her panic, get more secretive, or do something reckless that could hurt the kids before I was ready. So I came up with a plan, a temporary strategy that the attorney actually supported. It wasn't easy to stomach, but I believed it would buy me time. I told Emily I was open to discussing the idea of an open marriage. Not that I agreed to it, just that I was willing to explore what she was talking about. I said it was a lot to process and that if we were going to even consider something that drastic, it would require a ton of work, full transparency, and probably professional help. I said I needed time to think, to do my own research, and to try to understand how I even felt about something like that. I asked her to be honest with me about her relationship with Daniel, how it started, where it stood, what she expected moving forward. I also floated the idea of couples counseling, knowing full well it was just a way to slow things down. My goal wasn't to fix the marriage through this process. It was to keep her calm, prevent her from retreating into lies, and give me room to get my ducks in a row. Following my lawyer's advice, I also hired a private investigator. That wasn't a choice I made lightly, but I understood the importance of it. I found a well-vetted firm and gave them a clear brief: track Emily's movements, log her meetings with Daniel, monitor any moments where she was supposed to be caring for the kids but wasn't, and note any behavior that might reflect poorly in terms of parenting or use of shared assets. They started their work 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's expensive, but I see it as a necessary investment. If this ends in court, I need to have everything I can to ensure a fair outcome, not just for me, but more importantly, for the kids. I've also become meticulous about keeping records. Every day, I update a secure digital journal, password protected and backed up, where I document everything. I track Emily's comings and goings, the reasons she gives, how engaged she is with the kids, her mood shifts, and I paraphrase any significant conversations we have as accurately as possible. I also copy over texts and emails that relate to her relationship with Daniel or their plans together. Alongside that, I log everything I do, especially where it involves Nora and Ben. At the same time, I've made major changes to my own schedule to step into the role of primary caregiver. That's been the hardest part, practically speaking. I had several direct, honest conversations with both my supervisor and HR at work. I didn't get into the affair itself, but I explained that I was dealing with a serious personal situation and needed a more predictable schedule, less travel, more flexibility. To their credit, they were incredibly supportive. They agreed to let me condense my hours on-site and continue some of my work remotely after the kids are asleep. I focus intensely while I'm in the office, then log back in late at night once everything at home has settled. Now, I handle everything in the mornings, making breakfast, getting the kids dressed, driving them to school. I pick them up in the afternoon, take them to their activities, help with homework, and manage their bedtime. I go to every school meeting, every doctor's appointment. I cook their meals. This isn't just about legal positioning. My kids are my whole world, and they need someone steady right now, someone who shows up. I've also, as my attorney recommended, taken full stock of our finances. I've gathered all the paperwork, bank statements, credit cards, investments, taxes, property records from the past 5 years. I even consulted with a financial advisor on my own to get a clearer picture of where I stand and to prepare for any future outcomes. I've opened a separate bank account in just my name where my salary now goes. I'm still contributing to our household expenses from the joint account, but I monitor it carefully for any unusual withdrawals on Emily's part. When I told her I'd consider her proposal for an open marriage, she looked relieved, like a huge weight had been lifted. I think she genuinely believes I'm warming up to the idea. As a result, she's been surprisingly open about her ongoing relationship with Daniel. She'll casually say things like, "Daniel and I are thinking of trying that new Italian place on Friday," or "He had a rough day at work today." Every time his name comes out of her mouth, it's like a gut punch. And yet, I sit there and nod, trying not to react. She hasn't made any real effort to rebuild trust or offer meaningful transparency. As far as she's concerned, transparency just means letting me know her schedule with him and expecting me to be okay with it. Meanwhile, the private investigators have been at work and already sent me a few reports. They've been discreet, professional. What they've documented lines up with what I suspected. She's meeting up with Daniel regularly, sometimes in the middle of the day while she says she's running errands. They've got photos of them out at restaurants, parks, and even entering and leaving the same apartment building, most likely his. What worries me more are 2 specific moments this past week. In both cases, Emily pushed childcare responsibilities onto a last-minute babysitter. One time, she had someone else pick Ben up from soccer practice. Another time, she told me she was running out for groceries, but she was seen meeting Daniel instead. Every detail is being logged. If there's any upside to this mess, it's how much closer I've become to the kids. Nora, especially, seems to be thriving on the extra attention. She's a sharp kid. She's made a few innocent comments like, "Mom's out a lot lately, but I like when you pick us up from school, Dad." I keep my responses light, gentle. I never badmouth Emily. That's not the example I want to set, no matter how angry or exhausted I feel. And I am exhausted. I'm basically doing the work of a full-time single parent while holding down a demanding job and dealing with the emotional weight of this double life I'm leading. Sleep is rare. The atmosphere in our house is surreal. It's like we're just roommates now, roommates who share 2 kids and a decade of history. Emily floats through the days, almost cheerful, as if the worst part is behind her. She makes small talk about groceries or school lunches, like nothing's really changed. There are no real conversations about us, nothing about our marriage, the past, or where any of this is going. Just the occasional upbeat comment about how plenty of couples make unconventional setups work nowadays. My attorney is happy with how things are progressing. He says the pattern I'm building, consistently showing I'm the one holding things together while collecting strong evidence of Emily's ongoing affair and questionable choices, will go a long way if this ends up in court, especially when it comes to custody and support claims. How long I can keep walking this tightrope, I don't know. Every day is an act, but for now, this is the plan. The goal is clear. Everything I've done has been with one clear purpose: to protect my children, give them a secure future, and make sure that if this marriage was going to end, it would end on terms that reflect the truth of Emily's decisions, not some romanticized version of it. Open life, where I'm expected to quietly suffer for her happiness. Thanks again for giving me the space to share all this. I know the road ahead will still be long, and I'll return with updates when there's something significant to say. It's now been 14 months since I first wrote about what happened. A year and 2 months since I shared my initial update. It feels like a lifetime. The time since then has been hard. No other way to put it. But legally, things have finally reached a conclusion. And I think it's time I close the loop, for my own closure, and for everyone who followed along and offered support. The 3 months after my last update were some of the most emotionally exhausting of the entire ordeal. I kept playing along, pretending to seriously consider Emily's idea of an open marriage while we still lived under the same roof. The private investigators stayed on the case, steadily building a full portfolio of her actions. Her relationship with Daniel didn't fizzle out, it intensified. She started staying out late during the week more often, using excuses like last-minute client meetings or networking events. But the PI reports told a different story: quiet dinners with Daniel, mid-afternoon trips to his place, even a weekend wellness retreat she claimed was with a friend, which turned out to be a 2-day getaway with him to a nearby beach town. During that stretch, I had fully become the one holding everything together for Nora and Ben. I was doing it all: packing school lunches, helping with homework, managing their doctor's visits and playdates, reading them to sleep. Meanwhile, Emily's presence faded into the background. She still lived in the house, but emotionally, she'd already checked out. The moments she did spend with the kids felt forced or distracted, like she was going through the motions while scrolling on her phone. One moment in particular broke something in me. Nora had landed the lead in her school play, a big deal for her. We'd circled the date on the calendar weeks in advance. 2 days before the show, Emily announced she wouldn't be able to make it due to a client presentation. I didn't argue, but the PI later confirmed she'd spent that evening at dinner with Daniel. I documented everything. Nora's quiet disappointment, the empty seat beside me in the auditorium. It wasn't just legal evidence, it was real, undeniable proof of how far Emily had drifted from her family. Internally, I was breaking. Every day was a performance, calm and stable for the kids, neutral and patient with Emily. All while reading PI updates, managing my career, and quietly grieving the life I thought we had. I barely slept. The stress was a constant hum in my chest. After nearly 5 months of living this way, my lawyer and I decided it was time to move. We had everything we needed: an extensive timeline, photographs, videos, documentation of her neglect as a parent, financial records showing how much she was spending on Daniel, including suspicious cash withdrawals before their meetings and receipts tied directly to their outings. We also had my own exhaustive records, showing day by day how I had become the primary caregiver and the stable anchor for our kids. My attorney was confident, not just about the divorce, but about winning primary custody and arguing against significant spousal support based on Emily's conduct. We planned everything carefully. I found a new place to rent, still in the same school district, to keep things stable for Nora and Ben. On the day we filed, while Emily was supposedly at a yoga class, which, of course, the PI confirmed was another afternoon with Daniel, I packed up our essentials and moved the kids into our new home. That evening, when she came back to an almost empty house, she was served with divorce papers and a motion for temporary primary custody. I had already instructed my lawyer to implement a strict no-contact policy outside of official channels. All communication would now go through attorneys or a court-approved co-parenting app, only for matters directly related to the children. Emily's reaction, as I later heard through legal channels, was explosive. First disbelief, then fury. She accused me of deception, of leading her on, of planning this behind her back. She had genuinely believed I was coming around to her version of how her life could be. The realization that I'd been documenting everything and preparing to separate for months completely shattered that illusion. The divorce itself was contested, but not dragged out endlessly, thanks largely to the strength of the evidence we'd built. Through her attorney, Emily initially pushed back hard. She wanted joint custody, significant alimony, and a bigger share of our assets, citing her years as a stay-at-home mom. Her lawyer tried to challenge the PI's evidence, calling it invasive, and painted me as cold and calculated. But during the hearings, the facts told a much different story. The investigator's testimony, along with photos, time-stamped reports, and video footage, laid everything bare. My logs, cross-referenced with school and medical records, confirmed that I was the one showing up day after day for the kids. Every soccer game, every dentist appointment, every teacher meeting. The financial evidence showed she had been using joint funds to finance her outings and buy gifts for Daniel. It wasn't outrageous spending, but it spoke volumes about her priorities. There were tough moments, especially during cross-examinations. But the story that emerged in court was consistent and clear. While Emily chased her personal freedom, I was the one taking care of our children and keeping their lives stable. We tried mediation. It went nowhere. She wouldn't budge. Still clung to her belief that we could split custody evenly and that she deserved substantial financial support. The judge issued the final ruling around 2 to 3 months ago. I was granted full legal custody, meaning I make all major decisions, and primary physical custody of both Nora and Ben. The judge specifically noted the overwhelming evidence that I had been the one consistently showing up, providing care, structure, and emotional stability, while Emily's choices showed poor judgment and a clear neglect of her parental responsibilities. Emily was given a phased visitation schedule. At first, it was every other weekend from Friday to Sunday and one evening midweek. For the first 3 months, all visits were to be supervised at her expense, due to concerns about her recent pattern of disengagement and the need to ensure a safe, stable environment for the kids. After 3 months of compliance, the supervision would be lifted contingent on her continued reliability and positive interaction with the children. All exchanges involving the kids are now handled either at a neutral public place or through a trusted third party, usually my sister or a close friend we both agreed on. The goal has always been to limit direct interaction between Emily and me as much as possible. One of the bigger sticking points in the divorce was spousal support. Emily initially requested that I pay her 40% of my net income for 10 years. Her lawyer claimed this was fair compensation for the years she'd spent out of the workforce raising our children. But my attorney pushed back hard. We presented evidence of her marketable graphic design skills, underused, but still viable, her age, her overall health and employability, and most importantly, the relatively short window during which she had truly committed to being a full-time parent before her attention shifted elsewhere. We also didn't shy away from addressing her conduct, her neglect of parental duties, and her use of marital funds on Daniel. The judge clearly took all of that into account. In the end, he awarded her transitional alimony for just 18 months, and for a sum that was a fraction, roughly 15%, of what she had originally asked for. In his statement, he acknowledged her time as a homemaker but noted that her actions during the breakdown of our marriage, including financial misuse tied to her affair, had significantly undermined her claim. Marital assets were divided mostly according to state law, but the judge made a modest adjustment in my favor to reflect the money Emily had spent on Daniel. We had receipts, weekend trips, pricey dinners, gifts. It wasn't a massive amount in the bigger picture, but it mattered. It was a clear, legal recognition of the financial cost of her deception. The house we'd shared was ordered to be sold. Once the assets were divided and adjustments made, I used my portion to put a down payment on our current place, a smaller home, but one that's become something better, a sanctuary, a warm, safe space for me, Nora, and Ben to start fresh. From what I gather, mostly through the court-mandated parenting app or mutual acquaintances, Emily moved in with Daniel shortly after the divorce was finalized and the house sold. They're living in an apartment now. Her financial situation, from what I've heard, is nothing like the life she once had. The transitional alimony is modest, and between Daniel's income and whatever sporadic freelance work she's picking up, things sound tight. That early spark between them? According to a few neutral sources, it's running into real-world pressures now: bills, tight quarters, shared responsibilities. The kind of stress that comes after the fantasy fades and you're left with the everyday consequences of your choices. She still sees the kids per the court's visitation schedule. The transitions are handled by others, and I stay completely out of direct contact. I've heard that the handovers are civil, though somewhat strained. The kids are polite with her, but it's obvious to everyone where their comfort and stability come from. Our bond has only deepened. As for our life now, it's quiet, grounded, and real. This house may be smaller, but it's full of love and laughter. We've created a new routine. It's not perfect, but it's ours. I also shifted things at work. I used the upheaval to push for a different role, something with less travel and more predictable hours. That meant giving up a bit of income and stepping off the fast track, but it was worth every bit of it. I'm present now, fully. I'm there for school drop-offs, dance recitals, bedtime talks. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Nora and Ben are doing well. School's going great. They've built strong friendships, and despite everything, they've shown incredible resilience. Watching them thrive through all this has been one of the few gifts to come out of the chaos. So, this will be my last post. This chapter is closed. To everyone who offered advice, empathy, or even just took the time to read, thank you. Truly, from here on out, my focus is simple: my kids, our future, and building a life that has nothing to do with deception and everything to do with love, consistency, and showing up every single day.